Hello, all you beautiful seekers out there. I'm your host, Samantha, and this is the Sage Witch Mooncast. Today, I wanted to talk about fear and entities in witchcraft. Fear is a necessary emotion. It's one way our brains signal danger to us. Fear can help keep us safe and from harm. And it doesn't have to cause panic. Healthy fears have their place. Fear is one way we ensure survival and has been serving us for thousands and thousands of years. It's that little voice in our head that says, hey, maybe we shouldn't try to pet that bear over there. Danger in our modern times is a little more complicated than it was for our ancient ancestors. Through philosophy, the study of human emotions, and other sciences, our perception of harm is more nuanced. We're aware that harm comes in many more ways than just physical. We know we can be harmed mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and so on. We're aware of how those harms affect us physically, and we have a better understanding of what trauma does to all parts of us. One of the reasons I chose to leave Christianity all those years ago was because of fear. I was never devout, more of a Christian by default, as my mother considered herself a Christian. We went to church on occasions, and even if we didn't, Christianity was woven into my mother's life philosophies. She believed in prayer, and she believed in God. But even at a young age, I saw how fear was being used to influence and manipulate its followers. Fear of hell, fear of being a sinner, and an overall fear of being judged by an entity that wasn't privy to giving everyone solid guidelines in the first place, or at least was subject to the interpretation of whoever was preaching that day. I knew there was more to my spirituality than keeping my nose clean so I could eventually enjoy paradise. That's not to say there aren't good things about that particular faith. I know many folks who have successfully followed Christianity without those fearful motivations and live healthy and harmonious lives. It just wasn't for me. And unlearning these things can be hard, and from my own experience, as well as hearing the stories of others, it might be the hardest. I know when I formally left Christianity, I lived a few weeks with the fear of being smote by God. When you come to understand that very little in life is neither good nor evil, it can be foundation shaking. It can feel like you have no guidance. My suggestion is to look to nature. Learn to see the connectedness in all things and how those natural cycles play out. Learn to see how those cycles are mirrored in your own life. This is something I fully intend on doing a podcast on in the future as well. But I digress. Fear is not absent in modern witchcraft, and that is something we cannot ignore. Fear sells, and fear sells things like protection spells, amulets, and spell books. Many who first moved from Christianity to paganism are still influenced by the duality of good versus evil, and this can make them ripe targets for manipulation through fear. This duality can be a hard thought process to overcome, and many have not. For many witches, this idea follows them through to their paths. But can fear serve us in our magical practices? In some ways, yes. We burn candles and fire-safe dishes for fear of things catching fire we didn't intend to. We know to burn incense in well-ventilated areas so we don't become overcome by the smoke. We know that some plants are meant to be eaten, while others are not. Of course, these are more physical fears. One fear I've noticed in modern witchcraft is the fear of summoning something you didn't mean to. I remember hearing this multiple times in regards to spirit boards in my youth. And let's be honest, Hollywood has really helped bolster this idea with many films depicting someone playing around with witchcraft and ending up cursed. In fact, it's the basis of many thriller and horror movies, and successful ones at that. And I don't mean to be condescending if you believe this, but to me, it's a silly idea. I've talked in past videos about how gods and goddesses are just archetypes of nature. Their stories are allegories for different happenings and natural occurrences in life and nature. To me, these evil entities are just the same. They're often destructive and confusing forces and energies, not little fork-tongued, horned beasts who will haunt you at night. Destructive and confusing forces do exist in nature, but trust me, they do not have a personal vendetta against you, and they are not here to corrupt and collect your soul. But if you do believe you can summon something evil and convince yourself that you have, you've ultimately cursed yourself with your own thoughts. Our minds are incredibly powerful things, and they can run away with us if we let them. I do not acknowledge literal demons and evil spirits in my craft, so I don't plan to go into great detail about them. If you want to know more about them specifically, there are a lot of books out there that can teach you that. But that's also not to say it's not fun and even beneficial to play around with mythology. As I said, these myths and legends are there to teach us, as well as break these forces down into something we can better understand. I feel these entities are personifications of the trappings and follies of living life on this planet. Just remember to keep your boots on the ground while doing so. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't protect yourself energetically. We're well aware that energy exists and that our own vibration can be affected by others. For me, if I am to be wary of anything, it would be the negative and harmful habits and energies of people, including myself. As I've said in the past, I believe humans can proverbially be trolls, vampires, and other such mythological creatures, just not literal ones. By understanding the myths and legends associated with these beings, you can start to understand how someone's energy and behaviors could be troll-like or vampiric. This does not make those creatures any less real. In fact, I feel viewing them in this way gives them more context and, excuse the pun, fleshes them out in ways that are applicable in our lives. But one thing I do believe in is naming things so as to better understand them. You've probably heard of negative thoughts being called gremlins in the past. Creepy little creatures that hold you back and make you feel bad about yourself. They're not actual, literal gremlins. But by giving those thoughts a name makes them easier to identify when they happen. I call thoughts of self-doubt naggles and visualize them as smaller, more annoying gremlins that nag at you and keep you from trying new things through fear of failure. Where gremlins tell you that you are something, naggles tell you that you can't do something. They nag at you. But I think the biggest and most important name I have given is the nether. The nether to me are those situations, past and present, that keep you from growing and living your life in the present moment. They are natural, but harmful situations that you usually do not have control over. They're not malevolent, but they can cause harm and wear you down over time. Years ago, I was going through a very challenging time in my life. I felt drained, depressed, and fearful every day. I couldn't even hear my phone ring without having a panic attack. It was like a big, dark cloud that threatened to overcome me. It felt suffocating and inescapable. It was fear, sorrow, and grief. All natural emotions, but too much of them can be harmful. So I called it the nether. By giving it a name, I was better able to identify when I was overburdened and needed a respite from the situation. Through my craft, I created spaces where the nether was not allowed, and there I could rest. Naming things like this has become a household practice and has helped my husband and I communicate our feelings to one another. For example, if my husband sees me struggling and I tell him, I'm just fighting naggles, he knows I'm working through feelings of self-doubt. If I see him feeling down and he tells me, it's just the nether, I know he is working through some part of a past trauma. We're able to quickly communicate those things through those words and offer any support if needed. Otherwise, we just hold the space for each other so that we can work through whatever's vexing us that day. I also coined the term nether echoes, which I use to identify past pains and traumas so I could better recognize when I was being influenced by them. While the nether itself is usually present, nether echoes are from the past. Now, I am by no means a mental health professional, so please don't take my words as gospel. If you're suffering, please seek help from someone qualified. The things I'm sharing with you today are simply ways I have found that effectively help me navigate life on Earth. And these are all things that use fear to keep us from realizing our full potential. They're valid and do exist in one way or another. But the idea that we are going to open a portal and something bad might come through is just one way to make us second guess our own personal power and, dare I say, keep us from trying to connect to the cosmic energies from which we come from. Throughout history, it's been woven into the social fabric to underestimate our own personal power. Even today, in modern times, we're constantly bombarded with messages of, there's something wrong with you, and this product can fix it. We're taught we need to be thinner, curvier, taller, shorter, tanner, lighter. We're taught we need to smile more, but not too much. Be quieter, but speak up. this is also fear driving us. The fear of not being enough. Modern witchcraft also benefits from this fear. I've seen many somewhat high-profile witches on social media claim, "You better protect yourself. You're going to need these things, and here's how you do it." I believe this is a disservice to our community. When listening to someone who might be considered an authority or who you might consider a teacher, ask yourself, is their message one of fear or empowerment? And I hope that you ask yourself that question even while listening to me. When we learn to better identify how we are feeling and what our actual needs are, we can tailor our spells to those needs. It can be easy, especially for new witches, to get caught up in the idea they need to defend themselves, or that any mistake during a ritual or spell is damning. This is just not the case. A witch's greatest magic is knowing themselves. But this is just one witch's idea of how things work. And if I am anything, I'm practical. I feel magic and mythology are the weft to our lives' warp and woven together through time and generation. This is just what works for me, and I wanted to share it with you. So thank you so much for listening today. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to write me a message on either Facebook or Instagram under @thesagewitch. And if you like what I do and want to show your support, you can buy me a coffee or tea on buymeacoffee.com/thesagewitch. I hope you are all having a wonderful spring, and I wish you all the best of the seasons.